Greetings and salutations. May peace be among us. I am the namesake son of Marijan Kolic, a Croatian immigrant sailor who settled in New Jersey during the early part of World War II. I grew up in Rockaway, New Jersey, a small community with a river named the Rockaway River running through it in the 50s and 60s. Rockaway is about 38 miles from New York City, to give you a sense of the cultural influence that I grew up under. In 1977, once I had been traveling almost 10 years, I adopted the nom de plume, the nom de chanteur, the stage name, Jesse Slocum. I spell that with a K. And you can find my website at www.jesseslocum.com. Longer versions of a lot of what I'm speaking about here can be found on that website. Growing up in Rockaway, New Jersey was really rather idyllic. With the river running through, with the springs coming down off of the ridges on either side of the town, my older brother John and I would traipse around through those woods and along those fisher paths and probably actively pretend that we were Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. I don't know which one was which, but that was how I remember growing up. I'm speaking to you today on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the Woodstock Festival that happened in Sullivan County near Bethel, New York, in 1969, August 15th through the 17th, and the effect it had on my life. The road to Woodstock, for the sake of our conversation here, began for me when a childhood chum from school got me to listen to the first Bob Dylan album, which of course came out in the early 60s. And I full well remember the first time I heard Mr. Dylan's Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. That affected me very much, and a path of discovery continued after that. It led me to look into a lot of the country blues singers and writers that Mr. Dylan was listening to, and so ably covering or interpreting. It led me, once I went to college at Seton Hall University in South Orange, New Jersey, to volunteer for a weekly folk music program that a fellow named Richard Broughton had. I was basically the production assistant, and as such was able to listen to an awful lot of topical songwriters, catch up on Woody Guthrie recordings, and listen to a lot of the various different kinds of blues groups that were coming out, all without having to go out and buy the records. It was great. Things led to me dropping out in 1967. I traveled about the country a lot, into the East Village, summer of '67, out to California in the fall, my first trip. I was drafted in '67 and rejected for service in the Army. So no, I am not a veteran. And yes, I did watch the psychiatrist at the draft board that day in the early fall of 1967 write, "Disorientated, does not relate to society." And he was quite angry as he did it. Pushed the paperwork towards me. I handed it to a sergeant at the end of the whole business at the draft board center there in Newark. The man heaved a sigh and said, "You've been rejected for service in this man's army." 10 days later, I got my 4F. And a few days after that, I was on my way to California. I kicked around the country, east, west, north, south, often being given bus rides, plane rides, I hardly could play guitar. I didn't start playing my guitar instrument and learning how to sing and write until I was nearly 22 years old. It was catch-up ball, basically. I was catching as catch can, listening with every bit of ear that I had. I'd like to say that of all the sounds that I heard in that period of time between May of '67 and the summer of '69 was when I was walking through the wheat fields in eastern Washington state, perhaps 10, 20 miles west of Spokane, Washington, and I could hear the wind, the rustle of the winds waving in the wheat. That was a sweet and, to me, very righteous sound. There were a couple of occasions in my life between December of '67 and the summer of '69 that I found myself able to perform a special function in a musical event. The first time I ever saw the Grateful Dead was December 24th, 1967 in New York City. Without intending to do so, by default, I ended up being the first person to get up and dance to the Grateful Dead that night. That is something that I've been able to draw upon ever since in moments of doubt and hesitation when it comes to dancing. And then there was a spring festival in May of '68 in California where, without really knowing I was going to do it until I did it, I ended up dancing next to the Jefferson Airplane Band on the empty part of the stage. I was allowed to do so. And how that figures in my story and in my life is that, once again, when I have doubt and hesitation about just really letting things go, about winging it, about playing freewheeling, basically, those moments come into my mind. Now, I was traveling in 1969 throughout the summer and was in Colorado in 1969 when I heard a rumor in July, late July, full moon time, that there was going to be a big festival in upstate New York. And it was associated with Woodstock. I had been to the original Woodstock Sound Out Festival that happened in the early fall of 1967. If I'm not mistaken, Richie Havens was one of the featured performers there. And I had been following his stirring voice, listening with great appreciation ever since I first heard his recordings back in my Seton Hall days. So based on this grapevine, I chose to hitchhike across the United States to New York in pursuit of the truth of this rumor. I don't even anymore remember the rides I got or how many days it took me to get to New York City, but once I got there, in fact, it was true. I met a group of people, one of whom was a young college student, and her group of people were concerned as how we would get 90 miles or so up to Sullivan County. She offered to go and get her car in Buffalo, New York, if someone would hitchhike. So I, of course, quickly tossed my arm up and said, I just hitchhiked 2,000 miles, let's go. And it went without a hitch. There wasn't any problem in getting to Buffalo, where her car was parked for the summer. And she drove back and picked up this group in New York City, and we proceeded up the thruway. We got off of the exit for Highway 17, and the exit was closed. This is about an hour before the exit was closed. So essentially, we just made it. And it was quite a night. It was festive. It was a 4-lane parking lot. People were not, I don't recall, really very much bothered by this event. Everyone sort of understood that something unique was happening. And the next day, I do remember walking all the way into North Hurd Road and West Shore, North Hurd and West Shore Road, which is pretty much where the field that the promoters for the Woodstock Festival had rented was, and quickly getting out of touch with the folks from New York that I had gone up there with. Now, I was simply by myself in the midst of all those people. I had been in that situation before, especially in that festival the previous May. I wasn't intimidated by this. I had my guitar and my pack with me, and there was a sense of great spirit of elation in the air, and I was sharing at that. And quite frankly, a group of people who turned out to be art school dropouts took one look at me and said, "Hey, do you want to smoke a joint?" So I accepted their invitation and joined them. Now, this was happening during the performance of the first individual to play that afternoon, Richie Havens. There's the connection. I was quite happy that he was getting to play as long as he did. And my recollection of the event was I got up to stand around, turn around, and look at the audience. I've always been that way. When I'm in a scene, I want to take in the 360. I want to see the whole circle of how people are behaving. I'm not someone who fixates on the performers on a stage when I'm in a situation that's the least bit different than going to a movie theater to see a live stage performance. Now, what I do recall is the moment I got up and was turned around and looking at all those people as far as I could see, I heard Richie begin singing, "Clap your hands, clap your hands, clap your hands." He kept repeating it. And so it was easy enough for me to begin shifting, swinging my hips like you do when you're really dancing to a swinging number, and he was playing a swinging rhythm. And so I began clapping my hands and looking at these people that I saw in front of me that I knew from at least the past half hour, and coaxing them, encouraging them to get up like that, and then clapping my hands and turning around. The moment passed, the song was done, his performance was over, and frankly, as laughingly so many people talk about the 60s, about if you can remember the 60s, you weren't there. I don't remember a lot of the rest of that day. I remember where the free stage area was. I remember where the free kitchen was. I remember where the tent that folks experiencing, as so aptly said by Wavy Gravy, the fellow on the stage, that invited people to breakfast in bed for $400,000. He also said, "There's word going around here that people are having bum trips." Well, there are no bum trips here, only hobo sojourns. Well, if you were having a hobo sojourn, as I would the next night, you went to this tent. I remember that. I remember volunteering to help prepare the food that had gotten helicoptered in once the governor had declared disaster zones so that emergency services could be provided by the National Guard. And lots, tons of food had been donated to the effort so that people wouldn't go hungry. Again, there was a problem simply of delivering food on the ground. This became necessary. And I had lived my life in the 2 years between dropping out of Seton Hall and that August, often by volunteering for every kind of group effort that I found myself in. It seemed to be the thing that you did when you were around what amounted to a hobo campfire. So I went over to this tent, and lo and behold, there were huge organic carrots, and that's what I was assigned to do. I literally cut carrots into slimmers there until they were I should say, until my hands had blisters on both hands from holding the knife. When I got blisters on my palm from the first usual using of my right hand, I switched to my left hand. And when that happened with my left hand, I had to stop. But I did it because it was simple. People had to eat, and I was able to help out. When people find out that I did attend the Woodstock Festival, I often get asked, did I see Jimi Hendrix? Excitedly. Did I see The Who? I can tell you, I know I didn't see Jimi Hendrix that morning, that Monday morning, that sunrise morning, because I was asleep. And The Who, well, I really don't remember. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. What matters to me was my recollections of that free stage area. It was much more my own size. It was much more like a small camp in the summer that people would share, just going camping like people have done before and since for the longest time. And I felt most welcome there. I felt most comfortable there. So there's a lot of the music that I didn't even see. And then happily, once the announcement was made from the stage on the morning, I guess it was, of the third day, actually Monday morning, which would have been the 18th, that they needed people to stay and help clean up all those soggy tents and sleeping bags and whatnot that had been left, and that there was plenty of food to feed us. I did stay. I stayed for about 3 days. Some of my most enjoyable recollections were drum jams and singing and dancing around the campfire by the free stage, and simply the act of like doing the business of cleaning up after the party. And the most amazing thing is those people I'd gotten out of touch with the first day, that first Friday morning, had also stayed, and I managed to meet them by about Wednesday after the festival, and they informed me that they were driving to California, and I had reasons to go back to Colorado. So I said, well, great, can I ride with you until Colorado? And they said, sure. Now, all I can say right now is if those people are still alive, bless you. I hope your lives have turned out well. But I found reason by Ohio to not want to cross Kansas and Colorado to be with these people. So by the time I got to Indiana and we were going through Indianapolis, I had made up my mind that, well, maybe I should go back to the town of Bloomington that I had been taken to in the spring and found to my liking as a haven. Now, in the next segment of what I'm speaking to you of here, my experience with Woodstock, I would like to talk about the effect of finding out that that moment that I had been standing up in response to Richie Havens going, clap your hands, I was actually being filmed. Next segment.